The psychological criterion. Some people believe in a kind of psychological continuity that resembles physical continuity. This involves the continued existence of a purely mental entity or thing, a soul or spiritual substance. I shall return to this view, but I shall first explain another kind of psychological continuity. This is less like physical continuity since it does not consist in the continued existence of some entity. But this other kind of psychological continuity involves only facts with which we are familiar. What has been most discussed is the continuity of memory. This is because it is memory that makes most of us aware of our own continued existence over time. The exceptions are the people who are suffering from amnesia. Most amnesiacs lose only 2 sets of memories. They lose all of their memories of having particular past experiences, or for short, their experience memories. They also lose some of their memories about facts, those that are about their own past lives. But they remember other facts, and they remember how to do different things, such as how to speak or swim. Locke suggested that experience memory provides the criterion of personal identity. Though this is not, on its own, a plausible view, I believe that it can be part of such a view. I shall therefore try to answer some of Locke's critics. Locke claimed that someone cannot have committed some crime unless he now remembers doing so. We can understand a reluctance to punish people for crimes that they cannot remember. But taken as a view about what is involved in a person's continued existence, Locke's claim is clearly false. If it was true, it would not be possible for someone to forget any of the things that he once did, or any of the experiences that he once had. But this is possible. I cannot now remember putting on my shirt this morning. There are several ways to extend the experience memory criterion so as to cover such cases. I shall appeal to the concept of an overlapping chain of experience memories. Let us say that between X today and Y 20 years ago, there are direct memory connections if X can now remember having some of the experiences that Y had 20 years ago. On Locke's view, only this makes X and Y one and the same person. But even if there are no such direct memory connections, there may be continuity of memory between X now and Y 20 years ago. This would be so if between X now and Y at that time, there has been an overlapping chain of direct memories. In the case of most adults, there would be such a chain. In each day, within the last 20 years, most of these people remembered some of their experiences on the previous day. On the revised version of Locke's view, some present person X is the same as some past person Y if there is between them continuity of memory. This revision meets one objection to Locke's view. We should also revise the view so that it appeals to other facts. Besides direct memories, there are several other kinds of direct psychological connection. One such connection is that which holds between an intention and the later act in which this intention is carried out. Other such direct connections are those which hold when a belief, or a desire, or any other psychological feature continues to be had. I can now define two general relations. Psychological connectedness is the holding of particular direct psychological connections. Psychological continuity is the holding of overlapping chains of strong connectedness. Of these two general relations, connectedness is more important both in theory and in practice. Connectedness can hold to any degree. Between X today and Y yesterday, there might be several thousand direct psychological connections, or only a single connection. If there was only a single connection, X and Y would not be, on the revised Lockean view, the same person. For X and Y to be the same person, there must, over every day, be enough direct psychological connections. Such connectedness is a matter of degree, and thus we cannot plausibly define precisely what counts as enough. But we can claim that there is enough connectedness if the number of direct connections over any day is at least half the number that holds over every day in the lives of nearly every actual person. When there are enough direct connections, there is what I call strong connectedness. Could this relation be the criterion of personal identity? A relation F is transitive if it is true that if X is F related to Y, and Y is F related to Z, X and Z must be F related. Personal identity is a transitive relation. If Bertie was one and the same person as the philosopher Bertrand Russell, and Russell was one and the same person as the author of Why I Am Not a Christian, this author and Bertie must be one and the same person. Strong connectedness is not a transitive relation. I am now strongly connected to myself yesterday, when I was strongly connected to myself 2 days ago, when I was strongly connected to myself 3 days ago, and so on. It does not follow that I am now strongly connected to myself 20 years ago. And this is not true. Between me now and myself 20 years ago, there are many fewer than the number of direct psychological connections that hold over any day in the lives of nearly all adults. For example, while most adults have many memories of experiences that they had in the previous day, I have few experiences, at least in memory, that I had on any day 20 years ago. By the criterion of personal identity over time, I mean, as I said, what this identity necessarily involves or consists in. Because identity is a transitive relation, the criterion of identity must also be a transitive relation. Since strong connectedness is not transitive, it cannot be the criterion of identity. And I have just described a case in which this is clear. I am the same person as myself 20 years ago, though I am not now strongly connected to myself then. Though a defender of Locke's view cannot appeal to psychological connectedness, he can appeal to psychological continuity, which is transitive. He can appeal to the psychological criterion. 1. There is psychological continuity if and only if there are overlapping chains of strong connectedness. X today is one and the same person as Y at some past time if and only if 2. X is psychologically continuous with Y. 3. This continuity has the right kind of cause. And 4. It has not taken a branching form. 5. Personal identity over time just consists in the holding of facts like 2 to 4. As with the physical criterion, 4 will be explained later. There are 3 versions of the psychological criterion. These differ over the question of what is the right kind of cause. On the narrow version, this must be the normal cause. On the wide version, this could be any reliable cause. On the widest version, the cause could be any cause. The narrow psychological criterion uses words in their ordinary sense. Thus, I remember having an experience only if 1. I seem to remember having an experience, 2. I did have this experience, and 3. My apparent memory is causally dependent in the normal way on this past experience. That we need condition 3 can be suggested with an example. Suppose that I am knocked unconscious in a climbing accident. After I recover, my fellow climber tells me that what he shouted just before I fell. In some later year, when my memories are less clear, I might seem to remember the experience of hearing my companion shout just before I fell. And it might be true that I did have just such an experience. But though conditions 1 and 2 are met, we should not believe that I am remembering that past experience. It is a well-established fact that people can never remember their last few experiences before they were knocked unconscious. We should therefore claim that my apparent memory of hearing my companion shout is not a real memory of that past experience. This apparent memory is not causally dependent in the right way on that past experience. I have this apparent memory only because my companion later told me what he shouted. Similar remarks apply to the other kinds of continuity, such as continuity of character. On the narrow psychological criterion, even if someone's character radically changes, there is continuity of character if these changes have one of several normal causes. Some changes of character are deliberately brought about. Others are the natural consequence of growing older. Others are the natural response to certain kinds of experience. But there would not be continuity of character if radical and unwanted changes were produced by abnormal interference, such as direct tampering with the brain. Though it is memory that makes us aware of our own continued existence over time, the various other continuities have great importance. We may believe that they have enough importance to provide personal identity even in the absence of memory. We shall then claim what Locke denied, that a person continues to exist even if he suffers from complete amnesia. Besides the narrow version, I described the 2 wide versions of the psychological criterion. These versions extend the senses of several words. On the ordinary sense of memory, a memory must have its normal cause. The 2 wide psychological criteria appeal to a wider sense of memory, which allows either any reliable cause or any cause. Similar claims apply to the other kinds of direct psychological connection. To simplify my discussion of these three criteria, I shall use psychological continuity in its widest sense that allows this continuity to have any cause. If we appeal to the narrow version, which insists on the normal cause, the psychological criterion coincides in most cases with the physical criterion. The normal causes of memory involve the continued existence of the brain, and some or all of our psychological features depend upon states or events in our brains. The continued existence of a person's brain is at least part of the normal cause of psychological continuity. On the physical criterion, a person continues to exist if and only if A. there continues to be enough of this person's brain so that it remains the brain of a living person, and B. there has been no branching in this physical continuity. A and B are claimed to be the necessary and sufficient conditions for this person's identity or continued existence over time. On the narrow psychological criterion, A is necessary, but not sufficient. A person continues to exist if and only if C. there is psychological continuity, D. this continuity has its normal cause, and E. it has not taken a branching form. A is required as part of the normal cause of psychological continuity. Reconsider the start of my imagined story, where my brain and body are destroyed. The scanner and the replicator produce a person who has a new, but exactly similar brain and body, and who is psychologically continuous with me, as I was when I pressed the green button. The cause of this continuity is, though unusual, reliable. On both the physical criterion and the narrow psychological criterion, my replica, would not be me. On the two wide criteria, he may or would be me. I shall argue that we need not decide between these three versions of the psychological criterion. A partial analogy may suggest why. Some people go blind because of damage to their eyes. Scientists are now developing artificial eyes. These involve a glass or plastic lens and a microcomputer which sends through the optic nerve electrical patterns like those that are sent through this nerve by a natural eye. When such artificial eyes are more advanced, they might give to someone who has gone blind visual experiences just like those that he used to have. What he seems to see would correspond to what is in fact before him, and his visual experiences would be causally dependent in this new but reliable way on the light waves coming from the objects that are before him. Would this person be seeing these objects? If we insist that seeing must involve the normal cause, we would answer no. But even if this person cannot see, what he has is just as good as seeing, both as a way of knowing what is within sight and as a source of visual pleasure. If we accept the psychological criterion, we could make a similar claim. If psychological continuity does not have its normal cause, it may not provide personal identity. But we can claim that even if this is so, what it provides is as good as personal identity.